it's also saving gas. Electrical cost reductions in the wastewater treatment plant, a reduction in biosolids disposal expenses. We've done some purchasing improvements, and the police department just recently implemented a police scheduling system that they've seen some reductions in overtime costs. And then on the flip side, increasing revenues where we're at to date for 2011. We made some changes last year to the towing contracts, and that was implemented this year, so we're seeing some increased revenues through towing. We also reviewed some of the reimbursements we were receiving through police roster duty, school crossing guards, and school resource officers. We realized some savings there, or rather increased revenues there, just by making sure that the city's recouping what we should be. Some other examples on there were water account parcel comparisons, making sure that we're billing appropriately. Some residential accounts were being billed the commercial rate, which was a cheaper rate. So they went through and they're doing comparisons right now. And then we have tax billing and alarm billing, which also have increased our revenues for the year. Now looking into some of the improvements that we've made, I have a few slides just giving some specific examples of some of the CI events that we've run through the years. And then out in the hallway there, I do have some storyboards. From last year, we had our CI team present at the League of City meeting here in Bethlehem, so we have some storyboards that illustrated this, so you can feel free after the meeting tonight to look at some of those for some more specific examples. But these were a few I just chose to highlight. The first being permitting with food establishments. This was one of the first CI events that we chose to run, and I always say if we had to do it over again, it probably would not have been the first one we would have chosen, just because of the complexity of this. It involved multiple departments, and you know, we had people in a room for quite a few days trying to hash out this process. The one thing that became apparent when we first got into looking at this process, we mapped out step by step how this process occurs, and everyone sitting around the table, they were perplexed and they were confused as far as how the process worked. And we thought, if we didn't even understand how the process worked, how is the person coming in for a permit going to understand how the process worked? So we worked through eliminating waste out of that process and trying to make a more customer-friendly process. And in the end, we ended up reducing our cycle time for when a permit is actually provided to the applicant. We reduced the travel time for applicants. They were crisscrossing all over to various departments in the city. We decreased the number of forms, and we also created an applicant packet, so when somebody comes in, they have a checklist and they know what they need to provide to the city. All employees are now using a system called Community Plus, so if a resident calls up the Health Bureau, we can go in and we can check and see what the status of the application is, because everything is in the system. And then we also have a central point person to find and coordinate the whole process, so everything starts in community economic development, so people aren't fumbling around trying to figure out who the point person is. Everything gets funneled through that one central point person. Next was a system called Action Tracking. This is a citizen feedback system that we use to resolve issues. We get, if somebody calls and complains about garbage, for example, it will be put into the system. We really had low usage, and we got some employees together. We formed a team and looked at why weren't people using the system. It was a system we wanted people to use so we could track the issues that are out there and become more proactive versus reactive. But we weren't getting our employees to use the system. So the first step was finding out why they weren't using it, and then after that, then we moved into developing a process implementation to implement this system fully into the city. What we ended up doing, and you can see the trend there from 2008 to 2011, is we ended up putting a lot more service requests in the system. That doesn't necessarily mean that we have more issues occurring in the city, but it's people weren't putting it into the system. So now we can clearly see what are the key issues in the city, look at those, do some root causes around why are the issues occurring, and become more proactive versus reacting to the issues. So we have more issues going into the action tracking system. We decreased the average number of days it takes to close out an item in action tracking, so the problems are being resolved in a faster manner. And this is something eventually we do hope to trend down. Like I said, the ultimate goal would be to root cause some of those main issues that are going into the system. Next is graffiti notification and removal. There was really no process that we had in place. There needs to be information related to the police department from the parks department. There needs to be a process in place. So we went in and we created the process, and we now have all those graffiti complaints going into action tracking, so we have a better accounting for where the graffiti is occurring. We have an increase in the speed of response. We're tracking how fast we're responding to those complaints. We have the standard process for the notification and removal. We have one point person that handles the graffiti complaints and removal. And then we also developed a maintenance schedule for, and you'll see that picture there is the graffiti buster. That's the machine we use to go out and remove the graffiti. So now we have a maintenance schedule to maintain that piece of equipment, which wasn't occurring before the event. On the water sewer resource side, this year they've done several things looking at their commercial operations. The goal there was to continue to improve the integrity of their account database, improve the efficiency and reduce costs of meter reading routes, and improve the quality of customer communications. So some of the results there was the integration of GIS parcel information with account database information to identify unbilled parcels. Analyze data to identify those residential accounts that are being billed as commercial accounts, and you can see there that it's $83,000 that we found. And as I stated earlier, they're using GIS to plot the meter locations to make sure those routes are efficient. Public Health Emergency Call Center, this was another process that we developed pretty much from scratch. We have an agreement with Lehigh University that we can use their facilities in the event of a public health emergency. We can set up a call center for our residents to call with questions. So we had the agreement with Lehigh, but we had no process as far as how we would call staff out, how we would set up the call center, how we would operate it, how we would shut it down. So we worked with our preparedness staff to create this process. And then we conducted a drill with community partners and community residents where for a few hours we took calls and we went through the whole process of setting it up, operating it and shutting it down. And then based on that drill, then we refined the process. So now we feel that we're prepared in case we would need to open up this call center in the future. Purchasing improvements, as I stated earlier, we do have a purchasing action team that meets on a monthly basis. We've looked at both improving some of the purchasing processes and also reducing the total cost of high-impact city goods. Some of the results there involve improvements to the requisitioning process, making sure that we have an effective, efficient process that ultimately would reduce transaction time, making sure amounts are covered prior to ordering, and we also eliminated some unnecessary processing from that. Petty cash, we looked at our petty cash system and we made some changes to that system. We updated the cash policy procedure. We increased the amount of petty cash. It had initially been at $30. We increased the petty cash limit to $100, which ended up eliminating a lot of purchase orders that were put in the system that might have only been like $40. So again, we were reducing some transactional transactions there. The implementation of P cards. This is something that we're currently implementing into the various departments in the city. It's basically a purchasing card. Again, it would take the purchase order out of play, and now things could be purchased using a P card instead. So again, we're reducing some transactional costs and time as well. Right now, we're currently working on leveraging the spend to preferred suppliers. We're going through certain commodities, looking at certain commodities and seeing does the city across the board use the same vendor for the same like item. So we're going through that right now, and that's the next item that we're working on that purchasing action team. And then one of the last examples I have is with the police department. We've done several things there to eliminate waste. One of those being police vehicle maintenance. Police vehicles are down in our city garage every 2 weeks for maintenance. There was a lot of back and forth going on as far as what the status of the vehicle was. There were times when the police department wasn't sure if the vehicle was in the garage or where the vehicle was at. So we spent a lot of time searching and trying to figure out the status of patrol vehicles. So we streamlined that process, brought in the city garage as well as some of the police officers that are involved in this process, and make sure that we have a tracking system now. They know what cars need to be down there, and we're minimizing the time that the cars are off the road. Police communication, we did a survey about 2 years ago in the police department to find out where their frustrations lie, and communication came up as a key issue for them. They felt that vital crime information wasn't being relayed in between when there were shift changes. There seemed to be lacking communication. So we, again, gathered a group of folks together from the police department and looked at how we could improve the communication there in the police department. You can see from the picture on the board, that was one of the improvements they made, where they created in the hallway. They have current information, they have previous 30-day information. They made things available in electronic format, made sure that all their police officers have emails so they can be sent information electronically. And then we ended up, about 6 months after we made our improvements, we ended up doing another survey, a post-survey with the police officers, and significant improvements there in what they felt the communication system had achieved. And lastly, another event we looked at in the police department were non-emergency calls. We found that a lot of non-emergency calls were going to the 911 center for things that really would be resolved by another department. We wanted to make sure that they weren't tying up their time when they could be answering more pressing issues, that they were appropriately handing those calls off to the appropriate departments, making sure that those calls were being funneled into other departments, so they're not spending their time sending a police officer out to calls that really would pertain to another area. And then as far as moving forward, the CI team is working right now on completing the 2011 events. That's just a snapshot of a few more of the events that we'll be running for the year. One of the things that we're looking at are improvements to the commercial fire inspection process. We're looking also at mowing improvements, and vehicle fleet replacement, creating a vehicle fleet replacement plan. So those are a few things that we'll be doing yet in 2011. As well as working with the various departments to develop their 2012 plan. We want them to continue to identify areas for improvement for 2012. We're looking forward to having another leadership session to bring everybody together to develop those plans. Training, of course, will continue. We're hoping to continue to do more continuous improvement introductory classes now that we have the ability to do those classes in-house. We're going to continue to train our employees. And lastly, sustainability is one thing that we want to make sure that this program is sustainable. 5 years ago, there definitely was the need to bring this program to the city. I think now with the economy the way that it is, it can't be looked at as an option. It's really a necessity for whether you're a private business or government or a school district, whatever sector you're in. It just needs to be the way that you do business from this point in the future. So we're really working at building this program into the city's culture. So no matter who the leader of the city of Bethlehem is, no matter who is on city council, that this program is sustained and continues forward. Thank you.
I appreciate the opportunity. I don't know if there's any questions on the part of council. I'm happy to answer them.
Just one quick question. What's the funding source?
I mean, what you'll find in looking at, there was the original grant to get us started. There's obviously the CI leadership team is my staff, mayor staff, with the addition of Chris Bujak, who attends every mayor staff meeting, as well as Kristen, who lead the CI portion of our weekly mayor staff meetings. And then everyone that's involved in the CI team itself are employees of the city of Bethlehem right now, who are carving out time out of their normal daily duties in order to participate in these CI events. So the idea, and if you look at most of what was highlighted, most of these are relatively inexpensive in terms of implementation. Whatever costs are involved to continue to make CI work are found in the normal operating budget. For example, we did a what's called a 4S program down in the city garage in the mechanical bureau, which was basically to take their tool room and their inventory room and sort of organize it. And there were some minor expenses related to shelving and bins and those sort of things, and those were just absorbed within the budget of the mechanical bureau. Now, the hope is that, and what I think we found is, if you can find these incremental improvements, 10% here, 15%, 20% there, that none of this is really earth-shattering. But if you can do 20, 30 events like this a year, they do add up and they do have a very real impact. As I said, sometimes in soft costs, so we can, we have 54 less employees now than we had last year. And so do we continue to deliver services at the same level or perhaps a better level with the existing employees that we have? That's a hard and a soft cost, or can we deliver, in the case of a permit, in 14 days for a business owner versus 41 days. Obviously, if you're that business owner, time is money. 14 days versus 41 days is a real impact for them and their bottom line. So there is no funding source for it other than within the city budget, and the hope is that the savings themselves, both in time and hard benefits, pay for themselves over time.
Thank you. Any other questions, Mr. Reynolds?
Just a couple of comments. I want to say thanks for the presentation. I know we've heard about CI in the past, and I would hope that, and I would tell Ms. Biedenkopf, we might be able to get a copy of the presentation. I think we'd all like to take a look at that. I also appreciate the details, the information that was included there. Obviously, often we hear about, trying to run government more like a business. I'm glad to see that we're making some progress in that direction. I also just want to say that I think that the presentation, as far as the amount of detail was concerned, was really kind of highlighted some hard savings for us there. And I think that we need to keep finding ways to save money. So once again, thanks, and once again, Ms. Biedenkopf, we might be able to get a copy of that presentation or package on Friday. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
We'll certainly provide that. And I would say, this is the first time we've done a formal presentation for council. This is something that we highlight every year in the business leaders presentation right before budget, and it's something that I always take the opportunity during the State of the City before the chamber in January to talk about this, because I think it is very important for the public to understand how their tax dollars are spent, and that we do really work hard within the city to make sure that they're spent in the most in a very transparent and accountable way. So it's not easy all the time, but it can certainly add up if you work at it, and no one has worked harder than Kristen to make that happen. So with that, I actually wanted to, if I could, we've got Kristen. The whole principle of continuous improvement, obviously, it's very bottom up, and you want to get your employees involved because they know how to do their job. You just have to ask them sometimes, and they'll tell you how to do it better. But Kristen has done a tremendous job. The whole principle of continuous improvement is sort of you see one, you do one, and then you teach one. And Kristen is well beyond the seeing and the doing, and she is now really the go-to person for continuous improvement within the city. So with that, she has earned, and it's not an easy thing to earn, the title of a CI expert. And so Chris Bujak, who trains folks like this around the world, had thought it was a great idea, and I completely agree that we take this opportunity, now that you've heard some of the things that Chris has been working on, to publicly recognize and give her, she is a certified expert now in a number of tools related to continuous improvement. And so with that, I'd like to publicly recognize and give Kristen a certificate to recognize her expert status in all these many continuous improvement roles. So Jack, you want to help me out here?
You didn't know we were doing this. Certificate of Achievement that certifies that Kristen Wenrick has been educated in the following continuous improvement skills and has demonstrated in application and the ability to achieve benefits using the CI methodology and motivate people to make a very positive impact on the city of Bethlehem. So she is certified expert in process kaizens, process mapping, and root cause problem solving. Congratulations.
All right, that ends my report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Nolan, committee reports.
Special Council Committee met on Wednesday, October 26, 2011 at 6:30 p.m. in the Mayor's Conference Room. The committee reviewed the rules of council and recommended revisions to various rules. The proposed amendments to the rules of council must be presented in writing at a regular meeting of council held at least 2 weeks prior to the date when the revisions are to be finally considered, and the revisions shall be adopted only by the affirmative vote of 4 members of council. It is anticipated that a communication with the written revisions will be listed on the November 15th council agenda. The special committee will schedule another meeting to clarify the role of the council solicitor and discuss nominations and elections.
Thank you. We'll move to item 9. Ordinances for final passage. 9A, Bill 24, reenacting and amending the earned income tax ordinance.
An ordinance of the City of Bethlehem, Northampton, and Lehigh Counties, Pennsylvania, reenacting, restating, and amending its earned income tax ordinance, Article 333 is amended, to establish conformity with the Local Tax Enabling Act as amended by Act 32 of July 2, 2008, levying a tax on the earned income and net profits, requiring tax returns, requiring employers to withhold and remit tax, providing for interest, penalties, costs, and fines for violations and non-payment of tax, providing for severability, purpose, repeal, construction, and effective date, and related provisions. Bill number 24 is sponsored by Gene Belinsky and Gordon Mallett.
Comments? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Belinsky. Aye. Mr. DiGiacinto. Aye. Ms. Dolan.
Aye.
Mr. Evans.
Aye.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Mr. Reynolds.
Aye.
Mr. Donchez.
Aye.
7-0 passes.
We'll move to item 11, resolutions. 11A, approving 2012 action plan CDBG and home programs. 11A.
Whereas federal regulations require the city as a HUD entitlement community to prepare an annual action plan as part of a consolidated plan process. Whereas the city has prepared an action plan for the period from January 1st, 2012 to December 31st, 2012, and made it available to the public. Now therefore be it resolved by the Council of the City of Bethlehem that the action plan for fiscal year 2012 for the city from January 1st, 2012 to December 31st, 2012 is hereby approved. The mayor is authorized to provide the necessary assurances and certifications to HUD and to submit the action plan for HUD approval. Resolution 11A is sponsored by David D. Jacinto and J. William Reynolds.
Comments? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Belinsky.
Aye.
Mr. D. Jacinto.
Aye.
Ms. Dolan.
Aye.
Mr. Evans.
Aye.
Mr. Mallon.
Aye.
Mr. Reynolds.
Aye.
Mr. Donches.
Aye.
7-0 passes.
11B, certificate of appropriateness for 335 Vine Street.
A certificate of appropriateness under the provisions of the Act of the Pennsylvania Legislature and Bethlehem Ordinance. It is a proposal to install a sign at 335 Vine Street. Now therefore be it resolved by the Council of the City of Bethlehem that a certificate of appropriateness is granted for the work. Resolution 11B is sponsored by David D. Jacinto and J. William Reynolds.
Comments? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Belinsky.
Aye.
Mr. D. Jacinto.
Aye.
Ms. Dolan.
Aye.
Mr. Evans.
Aye.
Mr. Mallon.
Aye.
Mr. Reynolds.
Aye.
Mr. Donches.
Aye.
7-0 passes.
11C, certificate of appropriateness for 128-130 West 4th Street.
11C, a certificate of appropriateness for a proposal to install 2 signs at 128 to 130 West 4th Street. Now therefore be it resolved by the Council of the City of Bethlehem that a certificate of appropriateness is granted for the work. Resolution 11C is sponsored by David D. Jacinto and J. William Reynolds.
Comments? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Belinsky.
Aye.
Mr. D. Jacinto.
Aye.
Ms. Dolan.
Aye.
Mr. Evans.
Aye.
Mr. Mallon.
Aye.
Mr. Reynolds.
Aye.
Mr. Donches.
Aye.
7-0 passes.
11D, certificate of appropriateness for 444 Wyandotte Street.
11D, certificate of appropriateness for a proposal to install a handrail at the Broadway entrance at 444 Wyandotte Street. Now therefore be it resolved by the Council of the City of Bethlehem that a certificate of appropriateness is granted for the work. Resolution 11D is sponsored by David D. Jacinto and J. William Reynolds.
Comments? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Belinsky.
Aye.
Mr. D. Jacinto.
Aye.
Ms. Dolan.
Aye.
Mr. Evans.
Aye.
Mr. Mauer.
Aye.
Mr. Reynolds.
Aye.
Mr. Donches.
Aye.
7-0 passes.
11E, certificate of appropriateness for 301 Broadway Avenue.
A certificate of appropriateness for a proposal to install the previously approved solar concentrator in a new location on top of the mezzanine stair tower penthouse and to renovate the historic stair tower windows to operate as smoke hatches at 301 Broadway. Now therefore be it resolved by the Council of the City of Bethlehem that a certificate of appropriateness is granted for the work. Resolution 11C is sponsored by David D. Jacinto and J. William Reynolds.
Comments?
Question?
Ms. Dolan?
I'm not sure to whom I should address my questions, but I thought that at some point this proposal also included a wind turbine. Is that not under consideration at this point?
Mr. Kelly?
I would defer only because I'm not sure, I know it's gone through multiple phases, so if I could defer only to Mr.
I will. The chair will accept his response.
Thank you. The wind portion will be deferred till a later date.
May I ask?
Go ahead and follow.
I also am confused about the part of the plan where the solar concentrator is in view and then is not in view. How does that work, and when is it determined that it's in use and it's not in use? How often would it go up and down, and how?
Yeah, I would defer to the expert in installation.
Jamie?
Thank you. It tracks the sun, and where it is
Jamie,
viewed.
would you want to hit the mic, go to the microphone, at least maybe touch base with this mic so we can get you on the record, please? Thank you.
It tracks the sun, so it will move accordingly, and its visibility is impacted by your location from which you are looking at it from. So for example, within 10 feet of the building, it's not visible at all. On the 4th Street side of the building, it's not visible at all. So if you look at the Historic Bethlehem Partnership stop number 61, next to CVS, it's not visible. If you're looking from Montclair Street, or you're looking from Wendy's, it is visible.
You have the floor.
In discussions with the historic board, what was the reaction to the views from which it would be visible, like crossing the Hill-to-Hill Bridge or think you had mentioned, I think it's mentioned here that it will be seen from certain streets, in particular, Montclair Avenue, Wyandotte, Street Hill. So what was their reaction to the fact that it would be visible from those areas?
I think you might view my interpretation as biased, but certainly 8 out of 9 people voted in support of it.
But it wasn't a topic of major discussion even among the rest that
Absolutely.
its
It
visibility
took us 4 times to go through. We did complete Sketch It and Revit renderings to meet their final approval, so that it would have actual scale drawings.
And then finally, I know that there were concerns of its ability to withstand severe winds, some of the storms that we've been having.
Yeah,
being broken off from the building.
Last I checked, the commission was not responsible for structural engineering. That would be a function of the building department. And once you grant approval tonight, we will take it to the building department with a stamped structural engineer. That was part of our movement from one portion of the roof to another, was to ensure that that safety existed and that the structural engineer would do his work to sign off on the design.
Can you talk about the restoration of the quote penthouse and
Yes.
and what it means to be a smoke hatch?
The original intent was that we could not figure out what the boarded over portion of the penthouse was doing. And in fact, subsequent to that meeting, we were able to figure it out, and there will be a change there. But our intention was to provide smoke hatch by restoring the windows that are currently boarded up with white plywood that are not very attractive and very visible.
I don't know what a smoke hatch is.
The smoke hatch would be a device that in the event of smoke within the building, it would relieve pressure and allow the smoke to vent out the stairway.
Okay. So I'll try to phrase this question. Then is it safe to say that the current penthouse, which to me is very visible and not very attractive, one of your plans would be to restore it in a way that it would look more like it fits on top of the building?
No, the restoration is only of the windows that have plywood on top of them, and we'll make the windows work. So they're bronze windows that are 100 years old, with a little bit of TLC that can be restored.
Is the penthouse as old as the structure?
Yes, it is. It's original.
Okay. And everything about it is original except for these hatches?
No, the skylight has been taken off, and the skylight has been taken off. There's a skylight on the other tower. This skylight has been removed a long time ago.
Okay. Any other questions from council? Thank you, Mr. Dillon. Thank you. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Belinsky.
Aye.
Mr. DiGiacinto.
Aye.
Ms. Dolan.
Aye.
Mr. Evans.
Aye.
Mr. Mauer.
Aye.
Mr. Reynolds.
Aye.
Mr. Donches.
Aye.
7-0 passes.
Move to 11F, dealing with Officer Jeffrey Rogers. The chair will accept the motion and a second. Mr. DiGiacinto.
Okay, I'll move the resolution to confirm the adjudication of the Bethlehem City Council pursuant to 53 PS 39408 following the public hearing conducted by the Public City Council on October 17, 2011 as to Officer Jeffrey Rogers. This should be placed, will be placed on the November 15th council agenda.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Mr. Reynolds seconds. Discussion?
I would not be able to vote on that.
Correct. Correct. Or, correct. Please call the roll. Is it a vote determination?
An aye is a vote for termination.
Mr. Spadoni?
So we're clear on the record, the resolution pending before the 4 members that can vote is for termination of Officer Rogers pursuant to the charges forwarded by the administration. So that we're clear on the record.
Please call the roll.
Mr. DiGiacinto. Mr. Evans.
Aye.
Mr. Reynolds.
Aye.
Mr. Donches.
Aye.
4-0, motion passes.
Thank you. Now we will move to the Cameron Museum. The chair will accept a motion and a second to reconsider a vote taken at the October 18, 2011 City Council meeting on Resolution 11I, Certificate of Appropriateness for 425-429 North New Street for the Cameron Museum project. Is there a motion and a second?
So move.
Mr. DiGiacinto moves. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Ms. Dolan seconds. Any discussion? Please.
I'm sorry, I just feel so much, since I had
You could have more discussion when we